First generation Venezuelan American Hector Mujica is running for the United States Senate here in Florida. He's raising his young family here, and he could have stayed in private industry, but he heard the siren song, the calling to be able to do public service. And as somebody who's grown up in a family that showed that it could provide a place of refuge for people who needed help the most, Hector understands that it's time. It's time for accountability and transparency on the part of our politicians to their constituents. I had the chance to sit down with Hector to talk about his candidacy and to also talk about why he's going to be having that tough conversation with members of the Latino communities that voted for Trump in November of 2024. And joining me now, I am so excited to be able to introduce you to Hector Mujica. He is running for United States Senate to represent me and other Floridians. And Hector, welcome to the Katie Phang News Channel.
Thank you for having me.
Hector, I was really touched straight out of the get-go when I was looking at your campaign website, learning about your family. And I want people to understand that you yourself, first-generation American, just like me, your parents came to the United States looking for a better life from Venezuela. And what really struck me was how you described the fact that your father, as a pastor and community elder, that your home served as a refuge. And I guess I'm just going to straight out of the gate ask you, we have more than 600,000 Venezuelans that have had their temporary protected status revoked by this administration. Just today, we had a report from Human Rights Watch stating that more than 252 Venezuelans expelled to El Salvador under that totally draconian immigration enforcement policy from Trump, that those Venezuelans suffered, quote, systematic and prolonged torture and abuse, including sexual assault during their detention. I need to get your thoughts on what you think about what is happening to your people.
Yeah, I mean, this is both heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time, right? I think taking away TPS from Venezuelans right now is not only cruel, it's not only inhumane, but it's also deeply hypocritical.
Yeah.
You can't say that Venezuela is the world's leading narco state, that we need to be deploying the U.S. Navy to the front door of Venezuela's Caribbean coast, and at the same time be saying that it's safe enough for us to be taking away a legal device that was created to protect people that are fleeing from tyranny and from prosecution, right? So to me, this underpins how broken our immigration system currently is, and it underpins how cruel the current administration is being towards the people of Venezuela, who oftentimes are just being used as a political pawn in a greater game of political theatrics.
You know, talk about how it totally belies the reality, which is truly the American fabric is no longer just one white Christian nationalist one, right? It is, the American fabric is one that is woven from several different communities, from so many different cultures, ethnicity, races, and countries. But specifically, let's talk about Florida, right? Because you and I live in a very unusual state. I reject the idea that this is a purple state. This has very much squarely become a red state. You want to run and be the senator that represents this state. How do you kind of balance coming to the table with very practical, pragmatic, business-oriented ideas, which is something that your background reflects, but being able to still be passionate about being pro-democracy, because that's definitely something that's gone on the chopping block here in Florida?
Yeah, listen, I think we have a really unique window in this particular race, right? I think for too long, we have seen the same tired playbook, career politicians talking past people instead of actually solving problems. And again, this goes back to this spirit of political theatrics and political stunts and scoring political points that I'm trying to do away with. This campaign is not about partisanship. This campaign is about really how do we anchor ourselves on common sense, practical, pragmatic solutions that work for everyday Floridians. And I think right now, it's not just me. We saw this last week in the elections that happened in Jersey, in Georgia, in Virginia, in New York. There's a big anti-establishment sentiment in the air, right? People are frustrated. The system is not working for them. And no one represents more anti-establishment than me, someone that has never held public office, someone that is not by any means a career politician, but rather someone that has spent a career or nearly 2 decades in the private sector getting results for people and really bringing people together. I often refer to myself as a bridge builder. I always have to bring people together across political divides, across different sectors to ultimately build solutions. And that's the same ethos and spirit that I aim to bring into this office.
Yeah, you spent a lot of years as the head of America's philanthropy for Google. And the one thing that kind of struck me was you could have stayed, right? You could have continued to make money working for Google, but instead you've now chosen to take a path of public service. Why now?
I think we're in this peculiar moment in time with where it's almost the intersection of multiple inflection points, right? I think there's an inflection point technologically with what we're seeing right now around artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
There's an economic inflection point. There's a democratic inflection point that you alluded to earlier. And there's also somewhat of a cultural, social inflection point that we're going through right now. And I just think this moment in time demands a different type of leader and a different type of leadership, right? And I'm doing this because I love my state, because I love my country, and because Florida and the US, it needs leaders who are willing to put people over parties.
So we always speak bluntly here. People know me. I like to say, no hay pelo en mi lengua. There's no hair on my tongue. So I want to speak very honestly and transparently about the fact that you are running in what I have called just a couple of minutes ago, a red state, right? Florida has shown that it loves, at least on the majority vote, to embrace DeSantis, his cronies, who is, DeSantis is emulating like mini Trump, right? In terms of MAGA sentiments, MAGA policies, et cetera. I mean, how do you speak to them? Are you trying to speak to them, right? Are you trying to court the independents, clearly running as a Democrat, right? But like, what about those people that have been carrying Trump in Miami-Dade County, much to our shame, that are giving DeSantis these huge wins statewide? So now we also have Republicans that are running and controlling our legislature here.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think it's abundantly clear to everyone that the current political environment just simply isn't working for people anymore.
True.
I've been talking to people across the state of Florida, and the constant theme that I keep hearing from folks day in and day out is that they're tired. They're tired of all the political infighting. They're tired of the race baiting, of the fear mongering. They want solutions. At the end of the day, yes, you're right. The people of Florida have elected Governor DeSantis, they've elected President Trump. But at the end of the day, nothing's gotten better. They've gotten a lot of empty promises, and they still are having a hard time paying for rent, putting their kids into good schools. They're still having a really, really hard time getting healthcare, right? I mean, our current sitting senator, Ashley Moody, who I'm looking to take on this upcoming cycle in 2026, she just voted. She has voted multiple times to take away healthcare for over 5 million Floridians. We see actually one of the highest enrollment rates in the state of Florida for the Affordable Care Act. And this is going to be one of the states that's going to be hit the hardest. I mean, people are talking about these 20 million American national figures of people that are going to be losing healthcare as a result of this latest compromise vote that just happened in the Senate. A fourth of those people are in this very state. And right now, Rick Scott and Ashley Moody have failed the people of Florida who are dependent on these subsidies to be able to afford healthcare, to be able to stay safe, to be able to stay healthy and thriving and participating in the workforce, right? So in many ways, yes, they voted for these folks, and these folks are the ones that are failing them in this very moment in time. And that's why I think we have a really unique opportunity right now to be able to reclaim a seat in the state of Florida, because quite simply, the politicians that we have elected are no longer serving the best interests of the people of Florida.
Well, yeah, they kind of are only serving the audience of one. And, I'm curious to know what you think about what just happened. You just mentioned it. I am feeling particularly betrayed by what I saw happen on Sunday night by 8 Senate Democrats who decided that the ceding of ground to the Republicans was going to result pursuant to a handshake deal to some vague agreement to do something in December on a vote to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies that so many people are relying upon. I mean, Hector, you know how business works and you know how people negotiate. this is clearly not the remedy. And to your well taken point, we only have a couple of senators that are representing us. And if both of them are Republicans, Rick Scott and Ashley Moody, and both of them are really, again, serving only a leader of one, and that being Donald Trump, what happens to the millions of Americans that are hanging out in Florida that are just hoping against hope to get a livable wage and some affordable health care?
Look, I am personally glad that the government is reopening. Nobody wins, and working class families are the ones that lose the most when Washington grinds to a halt. But this deal, like I mentioned earlier, is falling short for the people of Florida. We're going to have roughly 5 million Floridians once again that are going to be seeing their Affordable Care Act premiums skyrocket as a result of this pinky promise that was made in the Senate without transparency and without accountability towards the American people. And Floridians deserve leaders who can both make a deal. Yes, I think compromise is incredibly important, but also who can stand their ground when it comes to protecting healthcare. When I'm in the Senate, I am never going to compromise on my values. And this is definitely one of those values. And I wholeheartedly believe that we can keep the lights on in the government without turning the lights off for families and for their healthcare. And we need to be electing leaders that are going to be holding that promise true.
So you are married and you're raising your young son, Luca, here in South Florida. How important is it as well? I mean, I understand that there's a lot of machinations that go on a state level, but you would be occupying a role in DC. I have been super critical lately, in full transparency to you, Hector, about the disconnect with our electeds in DC and those of us that are left behind in, as constituents in our respective jurisdictions. You are raising a young family here, right? I mean, you are also a public school kid done good. Like, you are definitely a product of our state and of our community. How important is it for you to understand that, again, we're here. If we vote for you, which we'll do, and we send you to DC to represent us, that we still need to be heard, and that our stakes are just as high, if not higher than ever, when it comes to making sure that we're okay.
I think if we look at the elected representatives that we have in Washington right now, I think if one thing holds true consistently is that they're a little bit out of touch, maybe a lot bit out of touch, right? Yeah. They're no longer paying attention to the needs of the everyday Floridian. And I think that's something that we need to be addressing head on. And I think there's tools to be able to communicate more frequently. I think one tool that I deeply admire and have seen some elected officials begin to use is these AI-enabled digital town halls. One thing that artificial intelligence is quite good at is compiling a lot of information, being able to distill that information into actionable insights. And hey, we have these tools at our disposal. Why can't we be putting them to work for us and enabling them to help us gain more insights as to where our constituents are currently at? And how do we also, as potential leaders in Washington, how can we also be held more accountable? How can we have deeper transparency, right? I think there's a deep problem in this moment in time around people losing trust in institutions. And that's largely because the institutions are no longer working for them. They're no longer delivering for the people. So I think there has to be one significantly greater accountability. I think technology can play a role in enabling that. And there also has to be deeper transparency between elected members and their constituents.
We have been dealing with day, I don't even know what we're on now, Hector, 43 maybe, of this government shutdown. And no, I don't agree when people say the shutdown's over, because it's not over yet, right? And although we've been dealing with that and the Trump administration illegally not funding SNAP benefits, et cetera, the one thing that continues that I see all the time on my social, and I suspect you probably do too as well, Hector, are the horrific images of the Trump immigration federal forces going out and doing their immigration enforcement moves, right? And Hector, as somebody who is a Venezuelan, as somebody who's a member of our community, but is witnessing across the country the fact that this is still happening in real time, what do we do? What can you do when you go and you represent us? Because I got to be honest with you, I think if there's something that's become a huge match, kind of like a huge flashpoint right now is immigration, which I admit the immigration system's been broken under multiple administrations. But this is getting to the point where it's like, Nazi Germany level kind of stuff we're seeing that's happening on our streets.
Yeah, Katie, I don't know if you saw recently the video that came out. I mean, there's just so much horrific content coming out on social media right now about these ICE raids and these ICE stops that are indiscriminate. But I don't know if you saw particularly the one that stood out to me, which was the one of this little girl in Chicago getting pepper sprayed. I think she was 1 years old, and she was in the car with her
When the
parents.
ICE car was driving by and they were just like, F it. And they were just going to pepper
Yeah,
spray her in the car. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that that image is sitting with me right now as a father. I can't watch that without thinking about my own son, Luca. And as an American, I'm appalled. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. This is not who we are. This is so antithetical to our values. And America's strength has always come from a place of values, right? From values of fairness, from values of freedom, values of compassion and dignity, not from fear and cruelty. So when families are torn apart in the name of enforcement, in the name of safety, when kids are traumatized by people in uniform wearing masks, we lose something far greater than our moral standing. We begin to lose our very soul as a nation. And right now, my community feels attacked, and rightfully so. These tactics are not just anti-immigrant, they're anti-American. And, we can absolutely be securing our border without losing our humanity in the process.
One quick follow up is how do you then thread this needle? Because it is a delicate one, Hector, of the fact that several in the Venezuelan community voted for Donald Trump this last cycle, right? And now, as we spoke about at the beginning of this interview, now they're facing the fact that, family members, loved ones, et cetera, may not have their TPS status anymore. They may not have asylum, and they've been forced to deport. And, I went on No King's Day 2.0. I had a chance to speak to Ari Ferro, and she was explaining, look, there's no embassy, right? There's just no ability for people to even have the paperwork if they wanted to leave to be able to do so. How do you manage that particular voting block for you? You are Venezuelan, you're a first generation American of a Venezuelan descent. But there was a very large number of Venezuelans, Cubans, and other Latinos that voted for Trump in November of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think one of what you're seeing here is a symptom of deep rooted trauma in the community, both in the Cuban American community, the Venezuelan American community, the Nicaraguan community. These are communities that have been plagued by recent traumatic experiences in their home country with people that they're near to and that they love and that they care about, in spaces and places that they deeply, deeply hold dear and care about, where socialism has played a role in kind of its nastiest version and completely corrupted and taking these countries to their bones and into their knees. And, right now, let me be abundantly clear with you. There's no one more anti-Maduro than me. And I think that's also what these diaspora communities are looking for. They have historically perceived Democrats as weak on dictators, weak on authoritarians. And I'm here to take a strong stance because I come from those very communities that are deeply inflicted and deeply impacted. My people and my family fled from Venezuela because of the trauma, because of the inhumanity, because of the terror that these governments were instilling. So the last thing I want is to see that be replicated anywhere else on earth. And the thing I want really, really deeply is to see a peaceful transition of power in these countries, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, in Cuba, towards governments that are democratic, toward governments that are honoring the will of the people. And we just got to keep working in that direction.
Hector, if people want to learn more about you, the pillars of your campaign, and if they want to support you, which I know they will, where can they go and find out more information?
They can join us on my website, hectormujica.com, and I'm excited to hear from you all. I think this process is also going to be one where we're trying to shift the script to a degree. I think for too long, people trying to get into leadership positions in this country have done a majority of the talking. I want to do a majority of the listening, because ultimately what I'm trying to fight for is to represent you all.
And for those of you that are tuning in, Hector's last name is spelled M as in Matthew, Ujica, Hector Mujica. Hector, it is a privilege to be able to spend this time with you. I'm excited for your candidacy. It is about time that we get people like you interested in running for office to be able to represent all of us here in Florida. Thank you for spending your time with me and for letting us to get to know you better. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate it too.
Thanks. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.